Penn State can turn Boise State into a one-dimensional team, and when that happens, it will be another convincing victory for the Nittany Lions.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of the show, and this is my official preview and prediction for Penn State versus Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. If you got a final score prediction, key matchups you're looking forward to, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. If you're new to these types of preview episodes, I will give you my prediction up front and then back it up with my reasoning as we're going through tons of game info. So I'll start with this. I think Penn State wins. I think Penn State wins convincingly. It might not necessarily be that dominant victory like it was against SMU, but I still think it is a convincing one. Penn State beats Boise State 38-20. 38-20 is my final score prediction. And let me tell you why Penn State wins here. Penn State is just overall the better team. They're the more athletic team. They have been the more battle-tested team. I mean, truly, this team is bigger and faster. For Penn State, between Abdul Carter, Zane Durant, Nicholas Singleton, right? All these guys up and down the lineup that are just overly athletic, overly talented, NFL ready. These guys are prepared to go off to the pros. Boise State does not have that. You will notice the difference in size between Penn State's roster and Boise State's roster. Yes, Boise State is going to be a physical team in this game. We will see that, but Penn State just outmatches them when it comes to actual strength on strength, the actual tangible strength on strength. Let's talk about the level of competition here. Penn State has been battle tested. Now, everyone's going to argue, most people are going to argue, well, Penn State didn't play the toughest teams in the Big Ten. Boise State played a Mountain West Conference schedule. I know they played Oregon close. I know that was only a 3-point game. But aside from a couple other Power 4 teams, Boise State played a Mountain West Conference schedule, so they weren't routinely tested throughout the season. Toughest other team that they faced was UNLV, and they won decisively, right? But week in and week out, after Penn State got past Bowling Green and Kent State, these were legitimate teams in the Big Ten that you still had to go up against. So the level of competition that Penn State had to face has prepared them for this moment, facing an Ohio State, a better version of Oregon. I don't think that was the best version of Oregon that Boise State had played early in the season. Penn State got the best version of that Oregon team, and it certainly showed. Now, from Penn State's specific point of view, actually talking about the Nittany Lions' strengths in itself, Penn State's ground game is peaking at the right time. Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton are as close to healthy as possible, and that couldn't be better news for the Nittany Lions going into the postseason. And the offensive line gelling together. I mean, this was a group that between them and the linebackers, I did not know in the preseason which one would be a bigger liability. And now we're seeing both week by week are getting better, but the offensive line truly taking that big step forward against Oregon. That's an Oregon front seven that has gotten better over the course of the season, that is proving to be one of the better units in the country. And Penn State's offensive line had its best performance out of the entire season in the Big Ten championship against probably the second best front four, second best defensive line that they had faced all season in comparison to Ohio State. So for Drew Shelton and then Nolan Rucci to play, not be a liability, but be an asset, be the best graded offensive lineman from the first round of the college football playoff. Penn State's offensive line could not be in better standing. And you're going up against a Boise State front four and a front half of a defense that is formidable. But Penn State, I think, has a slight advantage here because of what they're able to do. Now, looking at Boise State's defense, this is a team that the front half of the defense is going to be its strength. But when you look at the back end of the defense, some quality talent, but they don't defend the pass well. They do not defend the pass well. So they can't cover one-on-one, and they have not faced someone like a Tyler Warren. Where Boise State has an Ashton Genty that's going to be able to overwhelm defenses, that's what Tyler Warren is for Penn State, especially in this Boise State matchup. So Boise State is going to have to do everything in its power to try to take away Tyler Warren, bracket him, maybe even triple cover him. I'm not entirely sure how it looks for the Broncos, but then you're going to leave all your other cornerbacks, all your other defensive backs on an island. And Penn State's wide receivers have not been the biggest strength for the Nittany Lions over the past few seasons, as we've seen here talking about Penn State athletics. But Trey Wallace, Amari Evans, guys like Liam Clifford, Julian Fleming should be able to win their one-on-one matchups with all the attention being drawn to Tyler Warren. So Boise State's defensive backs overall are going to have their work cut out for them. I think Trey Wallace could have a big day. I really do. And Drew Aller, with the offensive line playing better, will have the time. We saw against SMU. Was it the prettiest performance from Penn State's front five? No. However, because SMU that's an elite front seven in its own right. That defensive line is as good as it gets. And Penn State still won the way it did, 38-10. So Penn State's offensive line is going to be able to create that time, help them get into rhythm. You could see unsung players like a Trey Wallace and Amari Evans get back into his routine of having the big plays, because Boise State is going to be so preoccupied with the Tyler Warren, and Tyler Warren will still get his against the Broncos. When I look at this Boise State team, you can make them become very one-dimensional. It is very simple to solve the formula that is Boise State, which is why I've been talking about leading up to this matchup that this can turn into a blowout. I don't think it necessarily will, because Boise State is well rested, and I'm going to talk about why Boise State makes this a game in just a moment here. But you can make this Broncos team become very one-dimensional. They are not built to play from behind. The defense has not been forced to be in an uncomfortable situation more often than not. So what happens when a Penn State team is going to be able to give Boise State a taste of its own medicine, whereas Ashton, Genty and that offense just play after play after play after play, controlling the time of possession? Well, that's something that Penn State emphasizes here and knows that if they can go up by 14, 17, eventually 20 plus points, if that happens to be so, and I think it does, Boise State is not built to play from behind. And this defense is not used to being on the field for a ton of the time. They are used to Ashton, Genty and the offense just going to work and just building these 10, 12, 15 play drives. Penn State's going to do that. Penn State's certainly going to try to, and I don't think Boise State's defense is built to withstand that. I also don't think I know for a fact that Boise State's offense is not built to play from behind. They need to play with the lead. They need this to be a one-score game. So Penn State can go up tempo and force Boise State out of its comfort zone. The Broncos have a very specific way of winning, and if they don't follow that game plan to a T, it can really spiral out of control. Boise State needs to rely on turnovers in this game. I think if they were to get 2 or 3 turnovers somehow, they absolutely stay in the ball game and hypothetically pull off the upset. But that's against a team that really doesn't turn the football over much. Drew Aller in this Penn State offense over the past 2 seasons, the best thing that they've done is protect the football. I know that he had 2 interceptions in the Big Ten championship game or 3 interceptions against USC, but those were select games. Other than that, the Penn State offense has been all but entirely clean when it comes to protecting the football here. So Boise State really needs those big breaks, and Penn State's not going to give it to them. I talk about Penn State's offense against Boise State's pass defense. Let's flip it over. Penn State's secondary, I think, is significantly better than Boise State's wide receivers. Look, I like Cam Camper coming over from Indiana. He's been their best playmaker, but A.J. Harris is a future starting NFL cornerback one day, very soon, and he will be able to take away a Cam Camper. Penn State secondary overall, whether it's a Jalen Kimber or Zion Tracy, we haven't seen that very often. When you go up against the likes of Oregon and Ohio State, it can be easy to forget that Penn State secondary isn't necessarily bad, but they have been challenged. But they are still quite talented. And going up against a Boise State group of wide receivers that won't be able to win their one-on-one matchups very often. So that allows Penn State to sell out for the run, stack the box, because you can rely on an A.J. Harris, a Tracy, a Kimber to win those jobs one-on-one. Last reason for a Penn State victory here, a decisive victory, Boise State does not tackle well. So Penn State has tackling problems. Wait until you see the Broncos. Good luck bringing down Tyler Warren, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, because if you already have tackling issues, those guys are hard to bring down as it is. Now, for Boise State, they can make this a ball game if they follow the blueprint, more or less of a pun intended, since that is the all blue turf, the Boise State Broncos here. But they had the Heisman runner-up, Ashton Genty. I'm going to tell you how Boise State can make this a game, even though I don't necessarily think they do, but what they need to do to keep it close, potentially pull off an upset, plus some key matchups. That is all on the way. Coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Now, that's definitely happened to me. I've had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track all of them down. It's like having a personal assistant, but for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Brings everything together all in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with the goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future, so there's no more stressing about budgeting every single month. You can cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Again, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. And today's show is also brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Football fans, the college football playoff is upon us. Quarterfinals, eventually the semifinals, and the championship, which means that college football has never been better. And to make sure you're ready, we partner with Home Field, the exclusive apparel sponsor of our show, to bring you the Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. Home Field is the go-to for premium collegiate apparel, crafted with comfort in mind and featuring vintage designs that'll make you the envy of any tailgate. This is a Home Field Apparel t-shirt. I had to get some for myself. With over 180 schools to choose from, including Penn State. There's something for every fan, but not just football. There's basketball, hockey, even wrestling. Yes, Penn State wrestling. The real MVP, though, is the Home Field Platinum Football Box. This is your all-access pass to exclusive gear for the 2024 season with 3 never-before-seen items from your school. Plus, VIPs will get even more. You'll get a special hat and the 2024 Platinum Pass for early access and discounts all season long. So don't wait. Head over to homefieldapparel.com and gear up today and use our promo code WEARE24. That is WEARE24. You'll get 15% off at checkout over at homefieldapparel.com. Remember, you can use code WEARE24 for 15% off at checkout. Let's make this season unforgettable. Well, after all, Boise State doesn't get to this spot without Heisman runner-up Ashton Genty. Any other season, he wins the award, but this guy is as good, as great, as elite, as advertised. Genty, don't have any misconceptions about Ashton Genty here. If and when he gets over 100 yards against Penn State's defense, that's just because of how good Ashton Genty is, and he will keep Boise State competitive to an extent, and they're not going to entirely change their game plan. I don't think the passing attack is built to come from behind, and by nature, you can only run the football so much to get back into a game if you are trailing by a bunch. But Genty is what will get Boise State's offense rolling, because eventually Penn State is going to wear down to an extent, but it's the fact that, yes, they can make that offense a little more one-dimensional by selling out for Genty, but overall through the course of the game, since they are so committed to Genty, they will be able to get, I think, at least 20 points in this game, but that won't be enough because I don't think Boise State's defense will be able to handle Penn State's offense per my score. Now, Boise State is getting healthy at the right time, so why they would make this a ball game is because they were winning without some of their better players. They are getting back 2 starting quality offensive linemen. They were able to still run and have that success on the ground. Yes, Ashton Genty, the Heisman runner-up, helps. A world-class running back helps. But now you're getting 2 offensive linemen back and getting the starting group that would have made this ground attack even better for Boise State. So convenient timing here. You also have the bye week to get even well rested. Boise State is actually getting a starting safety back as well, so that helps in its efforts to try to defend to Tyler Warren. And if Genty needs a breather, now Genty can go a full 4 quarters, get 30, 35 carries in a game, but they are going to get a key backup running back potentially. It's not necessarily a guarantee, but potentially, and that would be huge for the Broncos as well. They're just overall, they are getting healthy at the right time in the middle of the postseason. Offense is disciplined. Maddox Madsen does not turn the football over. The offense as a whole, Genty does not fumble, and Madsen does not throw interceptions. And part of that is having Genty, having play action, getting those wide receivers in one-on-one matchups. But I think A.J. Harris and those cornerbacks have the favorable advantage there. But my point being is that overall, Boise State is not prone to undisciplined plays. So when you compare them to SMU, where Kevin Jennings, it seemed like when he got flustered, he was going to throw the football into the hands of a Penn State defender more often than not. The same case can't be said for Boise State's offense with this quarterback, Maddox Madsen. 3 interceptions on the season. He protects the football above all else. Quality game manager, but not a player that can take over games, especially if Boise State is from behind. And they don't commit a lot of penalties too. SMU, why it struggles at times against better opponents, because A, they turn the football over a little too frequently, and they were one of the most penalized teams in the country. Boise State is not that. I'm going to go off the underdog mentality as well. As we talked about in other podcasts, and particularly what was pointed out by Bob, who covers Boise State for Sports Illustrated, is the underdog mentality. Boise State is no stranger to the setup, no stranger to the situation. So that's where you see the trick plays, that underdog magic, if you will, show up. And if Boise State is going to pull off the upset, it's going to be this, hey, we have nothing to lose. We can do anything. That this comfortability, this mindset that you can play without any pressure. And that's going to help, because there's a lot of pressure on Penn State. They can't afford to lose this game. They're expected to win this game. So Boise State can kind of rest easy on that they have the advantage of, oh, we can go and wreck this, be a bull in the china shop, if you will, to an extent. Now, key matchups, I want to start with the favorable matchups on both sides, where Penn State benefits the most, where Boise State benefits the most, and then those best-on-best ones, where those can really decide the game if they do not go in favor of either team. Let's start with Tyler Warren against Boise State safeties. That is a favorable matchup. Tyler, it's the same thing that I've said about Ashton, Genty, and I'm going to mention him here in this category as well. Tyler Warren against Boise State safeties. Now, Alex Tubner is coming back, and that helps. The more the merrier, more players you can get to be able to cover Tyler Warren, because it is going to be a tall task for Boise State secondary, particularly those safeties. This is like but it's more so about Tyler Warren is just that good. He finished 7th in Heisman voting as a tight end. Boise State is going to have to do everything in its power to game plan for him. So this is like Ashton, Genty versus anyone. It's Tyler Warren versus anybody. It's not so much a criticism of Boise State safeties. It's just an automatic mismatch because it is Tyler Warren. One that is a true mismatch here, and one that could really decide how Boise State tries to execute its offensive game plan, is not Abdul Carter, is Dani Dennis Sutton versus Hall Schmidt, the right tackle. Dani Dennis Sutton is going to be an NFL defensive lineman one day. Hall Schmidt has struggled at that right tackle spot. Now, Boise State is getting healthier, getting quality offensive linemen back at that center and right guard spot. But they're going to have to do things to help chip, because Dani Dennis Sutton, with all the attention that Abdul Carter is going to get, means that DDS gets one-on-one matchups with a Hall Schmidt. And with that being said, I think that he could have a massive game, kind of like Abdul Carter did against SMU. There is that potential for that. Dani Dennis Sutton is that much better than Schmidt over on the right side. Penn State secondary versus Boise State's wide receivers. A.J. Harris versus Cam Camper. Jalen Kimber versus Austin Bolt. Zion Tracy versus Latrell Caples. All of those guys have the favorable matchups. Maybe it's not necessarily as overwhelming as a Dani Dennis Sutton versus a Hall Schmidt, but those guys have the advantage in all of those matchups. There's really not a target for Maddox Madsen to go to at his wide receivers where he is going to have a favorable advantage there. And I have to include Ashton Genty. It's not necessarily a criticism of Penn State's linebackers, but be honest in an objective conversation. As much as I want to sit and say, yes, Kobe King and Tony Rojas are so good that they can overtake an opposing ground game. Ashton Genty is as good as advertised. He's had success against any opponent, and that includes Oregon, Oregon State, UNLV, the better teams that they faced this season. He wasn't beating up on lowly competition. He was having success against everybody in any type of game, playing with the lead, playing from behind. Penn State's linebackers, especially, I think Kobe King has been severely underrated this season. We've seen Tony Rojas have growing pains this season as that second-year player, as that sophomore. Ashton Genty and struggling to tackle at times. I think Tony Rojas, where he's had some of his saving grace, is in pass coverage. I do want to see how Tony Rojas is able to help out in run defense against an Ashton Genty. That might be a key one-on-one matchup where it really might favor Boise State. Now for the best on best. Abdul Carter against Cage Casey. This is the 6th best edge defender per Pro Football Focus. I want to make sure I have that right, actually. But it is for Penn State, so 8th best edge defender. 8th best edge defender in the entire country per Pro Football Focus against the 14th best overall offensive tackle in Cage Casey. And this can extend a little bit. I think overall, Penn State's defensive line, Devontae Thomas, Zane Durant, against a healthier Boise State offensive line. This is the best version of Boise State's offensive line that everybody is going to see all season here. So this is a strength on strength. This is best on best here between Penn State's defensive line versus a healthy Boise State offensive line. Flip it over. Nolan Rucci is coming off arguably his 2 best performances of the season with Oregon and SMU under his belt, but he still has a tough test again. Ahmed Hassanein, best defensive lineman arguably for Boise State. Nolan Rucci is going to have another tough test here, and it's going to be up to him because Penn State feels comfortable to a point where they don't leave Singleton and Allen to chip. They don't leave Tyler Warren in to chip. It is going to be Rucci in one-on-one battles, and can he have that 3rd consecutive strong performance to go along with how Penn State's offensive line is playing as a whole? Another strength on strength, best on best. Talk about Ashton Genty and how good of a running back he is. Well, Penn State has a dynamic duo with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen going up against Boise State's linebackers. I have a lot of respect for Marco Notriani and Andrew Simpson. These guys are veterans of the game. They are important. They help dictate the defense and help set up plays. They're basically coordinators right on the football field for this Boise State team. So Singleton and Allen going up against those linebackers, but it's not so much in run defense. It's going to be about defending them in the pass. I've talked about how Andy Kotelnicki, you need to spread out the offense, go vertical and go wide because they can't tackle very well. But I wonder if Notriani and Simpson have the speed to keep up with a Singleton in the passing game, to keep up with an Allen. You put him in space, Allen can make a move and make a man miss. He's not always running through a defender. He can hit a spin move, hit a juke move. Does he have that 5th or 6th gear like a Singleton? Not necessarily, but Allen is good in open space enough to a point where he can beat a linebacker in one-on-one matchups. The key to beating a Boise State defense is getting the football, getting it to a playmaker in space, and Andy Kotelnicki knows that. Talk about that in just a second. Jalen Reed versus Matt Lauder. So as we pivot back and forth, defense versus offense for both sides, the safety matchup versus Boise State's tight end and Matt Lauder. Lauder is the second option in this passing game, but arguably he's going to be the first one because I think A.J. Harris takes away a Cam Camper. I think Harris blanketed no matter what receiver it was for that Oregon offense. No catches for Evan Stewart. No attention for Evan Stewart. Dylan Gabriel went everywhere else except in Evan Stewart. And then when he covered Tez Johnson, he went away from Tez Johnson in the couple of plays that it was A.J. Harris. So whatever wide receiver that A.J. Harris is shadowing is going to be taken out of the ball game. Jalen Reed is going to have a big responsibility here because Lauder, by proxy, is going to see an increase in volume of attention, of plays designed for him. Lauder's a good tight end, and we've seen at time Penn State struggle to defend tight ends. Look at the Big Ten championship game against Oregon. Jalen Reed is going, that's a best on best, a strength on strength matchup where Lauder is going to see an increase in role here because the wide receivers will be phased out of the game by Penn State's secondary, the cornerbacks in particular. And then I'm eager to see just kind of the punch for punch. Can Dirk Cotter keep up with Andy Kotelnicki? Andy Kotelnicki rarely has called a bad game. Other than Ohio State, all the games that Andy Kotelnicki has called this season have been phenomenal. So those two just going back and forth and trying to scheme against the opposing defenses will be fun to see. Can Cotter keep, because I think he is an incredible offensive mind, just like a Kotelnicki. He's a veteran of the sport. He understands this. And from what we gathered from Bob from Sports Illustrated covering Boise State, is that he is going to have a few tricks up his sleeve to try to keep Boise State's offense in the game and try to propel them ahead. So Kotelnicki versus Cotter, offensive coordinators on both sides, kind of trading those punches back and forth to see, because I think this is a high scoring game one way or another. You're going to get a good amount of points from both sides in this game. And it is indoors, so there is no weather impact here. Talk about some more factors in this game. Keys to victory, we still got to get to that, but the X's and O's of it. How will Penn State's offense line up? How will Boise State's defense line up? And then the reverse side of it as well, plus some game info and injuries you need to know. That's all coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on more than just spreads, money lines, and totals. You can choose which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. It can be thrilling. You can even add passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, how many catches are made, how many tackles, how many field goals are made. FanDuel has endless options for you to bet on. And if you look over at FanDuel.com, you can see the lines for Penn State versus Boise State. Penn State is a 10.5 point favorite, minus 430 on the money line. Boise State is plus 330 on the money line. The total is set at 52.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com. And remember, you will get a chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now, specifically, the keys for victory for both Penn State and Boise State are as followed. Offensively for Penn State, jump out to an early lead. As soon as possible, get to a double-digit lead. 10, 14 points, anything is better than that, obviously. But for Penn State, you need to be able to jump out to the early lead, try to force Boise State to go up tempo with you, but then really bring it to a complete halt and slow it down, because then time becomes the enemy. This is what Boise State likes to do. Then you're going to do it to them. You want to execute those 10, 12, 15 play drives, as I mentioned, kind of like Boise State does. Control the time of possession. I don't know that Boise State is prepared from a defensive standpoint to deal with what they like to do. Of course, don't turn the football over. Boise State, you want to be able to take them out of the game, because with that underdog mentality, if they're in it, if this is a one-score game going into the fourth quarter, they're going to start to feel that underdog magic. If you don't turn the football over, you protect it, you keep Boise State, and you don't want to give them short fields either, because Ashton, Genty, and company will capitalize and get those playmakers into space. Boise State doesn't tackle well. Amari Evans, get him into open space, jet sweeps, reverses, Nicholas Singleton on a swing pass into the flat. It's actually pretty simple. And I wonder if Boise State can keep up with that speed. I don't think Boise State, I think they're athletic. I think they're quick, but not to the extent that Penn State is. And with that, and with the lackluster tackling, it's going to be tough to bring down Singleton, as I mentioned. Throw Amari Evans in there just because of pure speed that he has. Defensively, you want to stack the box, take away Ashton, Genty, make them throw the football, make Maddox Madsen beat you. Boise State is not built to play from behind. They're not built to throw the football. The comfort zone is relying on Ashton Genty 30, 35, 40 times a game. You want to make sure that Ashton Genty has to work for every single yard. Run man-to-man, run cover 3, single high safety, put 7 to 8 guys in the box at all times, and stay disciplined. Do not fall for the play action. Easier said than done, but be aware of that play action, because it's going to happen for Boise State. Force Maddox Madsen to beat you. Make him make the tougher throws and not rely on Genty the entire time. For Boise State, you want to get Genty into rhythm as early and often as possible. You want to play keep away from Andy Kotelnicki in this Penn State offense, because I feel like they can score at will. We have seen them score in less than 20 seconds all the way at the beginning of the season, granted, against West Virginia, but Penn State can score in a matter of seconds. They can also sustain the 8-minute, 9-minute drive and just take away the clock. Clock can be the enemy in this game against Boise State, so you want it in your favor if you are the Broncos. Play keep away from Kotelnicki and Penn State's offense and get pressure and force turnover. So I've talked about how Penn State needs to avoid turning the football over, because any and every turnover you give to Boise State, it just adds to the confidence and plays into its strengths. Now for the X's and O's part of it, Penn State's offense is going to go quick, up-tempo at first, and then they're going to slow it down. They're going to try to stretch the field. They're going to go wide and they're going to go vertical. This is my expectation. This is my recommendation. If I was calling plays for Penn State, Andy Kotelnicki is much better suited to do it than myself, of course. But that's what I would do against this Boise State team, as I've talked about the entire time, and then settle into the smash mouth football. You're going to go 3-4 wide receiver sets early on, most likely 3. Penn State doesn't routinely go 4 wide receiver sets, but it's not like they can't. And maybe they should against this Boise State team, at least in the beginning. But then you have multiple tight ends to be able to go 2-3 tight end sets routinely down the stretch and run the football at Boise State like they do to its opponents. Boise State's defense, they run a 4-2-5 similarly to Penn State's. Boise State's front half does deserve respect here. They will blitz. They are going to run zone to compensate, to try to take away an Amari Evans or a Tyler Warren, but I feel like you're going to have to try harder than that. You can't just run your basic zones to fool an Andy Kotelnicki and a Drew Aller. Drew Aller is a student of the football game. His mind is one of the best in all of college football, as a 20-year-old starting quarterback. Yes, he's a second-year starter, a third-year player, but as a 20-year-old, it is really impressive how far he has come to understand the X's and O's of the game. You can't trick him. You can't trick Andy Kotelnicki, and that's why Penn State's able to move the football as well as they do all season long. For Penn State's defense, expect Penn State to run a lot of man-to-man. They're going to stack the box and do everything to take away Ashton, Genty. For Boise State, they are going to run trick plays. They are going to run play action. There's going to be some misdirection because it is too obvious just to run halfback dives, but it also takes some of the pressure off of a Genty. If you're Boise State, if you're Dirk Cotter, the offensive coordinator, you have to do things to manufacture plays, playmaking ability, because Maddox Madsen, Cam Camper, to an extent, Lauder as well, the tight end, you're going to have to manufacture some plays, kind of like Andy Kotelnicki has done this season with Penn State's offense, manufacturing, scheming guys open. Cotter's going to have to be able to do that, because talent on talent, Boise State's not going to win those matchups as routinely as you would like them to if you're a Broncos fan, if you're the Broncos team, if you're a Broncos fan in this case. Game info. For anybody that's not aware, this game is on New Year's Eve, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, kickoff on ESPN. It's the Fiesta Bowl. It is the college football playoff quarterfinal. This one going down in Glendale, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix. It is at the Arizona Cardinals Stadium, State Farm Stadium. The spread, what it's been for the most part, the entire time leading up to this game, Penn State is a 10.5 point favorite, minus 430 on the money line, plus 330 for Boise State. Total is set at 52.5. This is, of course, an indoor stadium, so there is no weather impact here. All the stadiums are going to be favorable because of that indoor roof accessibility for the remaining games. They've never played each other. There are few historical implications in the head-to-head matchup here. But Penn State likes the Fiesta Bowl. Boise State likes the Fiesta Bowl. Both teams are undefeated. Penn State is 7-0 all-time in the Fiesta Bowl. Boise State is 3-0 all-time in this game. And thinking back to the most recent ones, or the iconic ones in recent memory, December 30th, 2017, Penn State won 35-28 against Washington. That was a game where Penn State jumped out to a 28-7 lead. And one of the best moments from that game was Saquon Barkley's 92-yard touchdown run against the Huskies. And then going back a little further, this one, honestly, I see the highlights pop up a little more routinely than I should, but I don't mind it at all. It's the Boise State upset victory over Oklahoma, January 1st, 2007, 43-42, the go-ahead 2-point conversion in that game. You had the hook and ladder on 4th down, and then the Statue of Liberty play for that 2-point conversion. Ian Johnson was a big part, that running back in that game for Boise State. So the Fiesta Bowl means something, respectively, for these two programs. There's a lot of history there and a lot of positive history for both sides. Winner will get to face either Notre Dame or Georgia in the Orange Bowl over in Miami, Florida. So that's what is at stake here. A semifinals appearance against two very talented, I mean, to say the least, two very talented programs. I mean, both of those teams can contend for a national title, Notre Dame and Georgia. Injuries to be aware of. Questionable players of note. For Penn State, we know who's going to be out, almost all but guaranteed. Alonzo Ford has a long-term injury, or a co-starter essentially at defensive tackle. Anthony Donko was the starting right tackle. Nolan Rucci has filled in well, but Anthony Donko was the starter for a reason. World-class safety, KJ Winston, would have been nice to have him back, but he is going to be out. James Franklin confirmed that he's not returning. Rotational tight end Andrew Rapplier, rotational defensive ends Uriah Fisher, backup running back Cam Wallace, all are going to expected to be out for this game. Questionable, Elliott Washington, a defensive back that has missed time recently for Penn State. We'll see if he plays a full game or has an increased workload. Caden Saunders and Keon Wiley, they've been practicing, but will they be back for this game? They're at least questionable. They most likely will be out. They didn't play against SMU, but I'd still rule them as questionable in case there's a positive turn in their health. Tyser Denmark, I've heard rumors that Tyser Denmark is on, and then he ended up missing that game against SMU. He was also out, so we'll see if he returns to join Caden Saunders. And then Boise State's injured players of note. They're getting back Mason Rudolph and Roger Carrion, the starting lineman at center and guard, but I will put them as questionable. Same thing with Alex Tubner at that safety spot and running back Sire Gaines. It is unlikely that he plays, but there's still at least he's worked his way back from an injury to a point where he is questionable and could go in this game. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I appreciate each and every one of you for checking out this preview episode. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Key matchups you're looking forward to. Your final score prediction. Let me know yours down in the comments. Please leave a like on this episode, share it with friends and family, and if you're not already, become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Nittany Lions on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams. And thanks again for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. For your second listen and watch, check out Locked On Big Ten with host Craig Sheeman. Craig puts the Big Ten first when seems like everybody else overlooks it, and that was certainly the case with this playoff discourse, but Craig does an excellent job of covering the Big Ten. That show is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, Locked On Big Ten. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.